Hello, my name is Alex Terrego, and I had the good fortune to be taught through the Socratic Inquiry method. To say the least, it has served me well on my journey. I was taught to think, I was not taught to memorize, which means that ever since I have managed the inevitable changes I experienced better than most. And I have this urge to share my method of teaching thinking skills alongside the curriculum, especially with teachers, students, and parents. But in reality, this method can help anyone who needs to think about issues and problems to which there are no correct answers. In other words, almost every issue that life will ever present. This matters because there is only one certainty about your children's future. Their future is change. And my mission is to ensure that anyone can be proactive in their responses to change. How? By deliberate design thinking, especially in our schools. Are we right to worry about change? Aristotle said that to study anything is to study change, and if he's right, that means that managing change really matters. Let me explain. Everything is in the process of being altered from one state to another, even seemingly inert rocks. We can't stop alteration, but we can manage it. How? By using the gift that differentiates us from all other life forms, thinking. Humans are no strangers to managing change. We do it unconsciously. As our bodies and minds change, we instinctively create ways to manage the rate of that change because we have this mysterious urge, this will to live. When we don't manage change creatively, we get into trouble. Let me use this example. We are managing our schools by willfully disregarding change. As a result, we are preparing our children for a future that no longer exists. There can only be two explanations for this, either indifference, which is doubtful, or vested interests who profit from the status quo, which is likely. So this is the question. In the age of Google and voice recognition, is the ability to memorize facts and fill in little ovals according to a multiple choice option an appropriate way to measure high school graduation? Really? Students have a 30% chance of being right just by guessing. We are almost exclusively teaching facts for one reason: they are easy to test. That's like the proverbial drunk looking for his lost wallet under a lamp because, well, that's where the light is. And that is the very definition of convergent thinking, and I would argue ignorance-based thinking. We need the opposite kind of thinking, divergent or critical thinking. And it's simple. Today's students are taught to ask a question and then answer it and stop there. But there's a next step, and we are hiding it from them. What is it? Question the answer and repeat until satisfied. It works. Businesses depend on this kind of thinking. Even in times of moderate change, there has always been collateral damage to those who do not adapt, and only one outcome: obsolescence. Our Neanderthal cousins, for example. And we are decidedly not in a time of moderate change. In fact, this neglect in our schools is happening just at a time when change is the new normal, every few months. And we still teach only fact memorization in our schools, not the skills needed to manage change by managing facts as just one part of managing change. Facts are not knowledge or even information any more than crude oil is rocket fuel. Thinking refines facts into something more useful, and employers need that. Compounding our school's strategic error, artificial intelligence has already memorized and categorized most facts, making them searchable, and is now poised to take the next step towards thinking. This does not have to be bad news for our schools and their students, however. I am proposing a simple remedy any teacher can learn in 15 minutes. As I speak in 2018, change is happening ever faster, collapsing time horizons and altering all of us ever more rapidly in the process. The only guardians and guides we have are history and the power of thought. Even a brief look at recent history is illuminating. 40 years after the digital computers appeared, they became personal appliances. A few years later, these personal appliances became portable and networked. 7 years later, the World Wide Web appeared. Then, in 2005, everything really changed. The first portable supercomputers, masquerading as smartphones with digital cameras and keyboards, appeared, rapidly followed by social media. Now we have 2.5 billion smartphones and just as many users of social media. You may not have noticed yet, but there are also 90 billion interconnected sensors attached to almost everything imaginable, from the human heart to jet engines to the household fridge. At this rate, each cell in the human body is going to have its own website. That is geometric change. It's on an epic scale, and it's real. We've already changed forever, and it's only just the beginning. However, I, for one, am supremely confident that the human mind will stay at the top of the evolutionary tree if we recover an emphasis on and an admiration for our cognitive abilities. We have rewarded ignorance long enough. We have put answers on a pedestal for long enough. It is time to replace answers with questions. Why? Because this is what's on the 10 to 15 year horizon. In 10 to 15 years, billions of smartphones will have become outdated scrap metal, replaced by quantum computing, which, it should be noted, is as different from traditional computing as an abacus is from a MacBook. They will be 100 million times faster than today's classical computers, and they will be connected by a hack-proof quantum network. Sometime after that, they will be implanted in humans. And that's the near term. We can be passive about these massive changes and fearful, or we can be proactive and prepare our students to handle them. Either way, these changes are coming. So we need to be proactive, but we also need to be realistic. And viewed from the contextual or big picture point of view I just outlined, this rapid pace of change makes the future less predictable. I do believe, however, that there is one safe prediction, other than death and taxes, and it is this. Technology companies will welcome this rapidly changing state of affairs. Why? Because it's an opportunity to make money. How? First, by deploying more must-have technology, and second, by helping their clients replace people with technology. Now, this is where the proactive part must come in. Fortunately, organizations will need human thinkers to help them evolve. So, how can our children, the messengers we send into a future we will not see, help employers benefit and benefit in turn? By nurturing their innate thinking skills to turn these rapid changes into opportunities. More specifically, by awakening a sleeping giant, a dormant 2,400-year-old solution. It's called ideation, or deliberate design thinking. What's the best news about ideation? All children are born with this secret weapon. Schools repress it. Ideation is the ability to think, reason, conjecture, hypothesize, imagine, or intuit through deep questioning our way to a new idea. And because the process is proven, students will be listened to. They like that. And preferably in a group. They like that also. You may know all of this as divergent thinking, looking for as many answers as possible. And by now you know what we are teaching 50 million students, convergent thinking. We are teaching our next generation to look for and be satisfied with one answer. And this means they are not complicit in their own learning. That's deadly. Think of this as asymmetric warfare with your children in the line of fire, and you will understand. Think of ideation, on the other hand, as satisfying our innate and insatiable curiosity and inquisitiveness. Think of it as the only way we, Homo sapiens, can maintain our advantage and evolve. How can I be so sure? Because it's always been that way. Fortunately, machines aren't good at ideation, yet. But artificial intelligence is on a much faster learning curve than most humans. So it's a race. As H.G. Wells put it 100 years ago, civilization is a race between education and catastrophe. Are we winning or are we losing? We can welcome change as the new rule and manage it, or we can become ruled by it. It's up to us, and I want to help, and I have a way to help. At the end of this introduction, I'm going to invite you to watch a video of me explaining and teaching my Terego method to 25 8th and 9th grade students at the Donahue Academy in Florida. They learned, then they deployed the method in teams with excellent results. You can too, in under an hour. Watch the students and teachers as I share the reasons why thinking is important, and then teach the method. and then observe as teams of 9th graders rediscover, hone, leverage, and optimize the amazing ideation skills they were all born with. What are these skills? Creative, critical, original thinking, problem solving, collaboration, and communications, written or otherwise. Ask yourself, isn't that how we should be teaching? The good news, all it takes is questioning. Questioning is thinking, and thinking is questioning, and it results in ideation. As you have probably noticed, children are born interrogators. Unfortunately, that's a skill our school system actively discourages. If I have not convinced you so far of the immense value of this alchemy already possessed by all children, consider this. Ideation is probably the evolutionary skill. How can I prove this? Well, 500,000 years ago, one of your ancestors asked this question. What if I used that sharp rock I found as a blade? He did, and everything after that became a new and better human paradigm. My guess is that it was probably a woman, however, who ideated this way. What if we sow seeds, domesticate animals, and stop all this moving around? And I suspect the response from her sister-in-law might have been, well, duh. To be human is to be faced with important decisions, but this moment in time is different. Now we are at an especially momentous juncture. For the first time, there's an existential element to the choices we make. Now we will compete with our own creation, and we can ideate or we can become an important footnote of history. So, do you think now would be the right time to ask and answer questions about the purpose of digital technology? I think so. To begin, think of the inventions of the blade, the wheel, and writing. They created extensions to our existing human abilities. These extensions made life better in some way, and they were synergistic with our needs. Our tools have always reciprocated and complemented our needs, until now. Marshall McLuhan, the first person to take a critical look at how media and other tools affect us, said, "First we shape our tools, and then they shape us." Until the 1930s, the tools we invented shaped us mostly in a positive and reciprocal manner, furthering our evolution. Now, the descendants of those mid-20th century digital behemoths are tiny network computers and may represent a competitive and non-reciprocal threat. The network computer may be embarking on a different evolutionary path with a new agenda, and that agenda may include shaping us, using the tools we invented, like the Russians are already doing. Some version of that scenario is the world your children and grandchildren will inherit. We must equip them with the tools they need. Simply stated, we have not done that for generations. In fact, just as all this is happening, American schools are fighting the last war. And what's worse, they're losing it. Einstein wrote, "Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of madness." We don't have the luxury of hiding behind the idea that it's always worked that way. It has not. Why not? The root cause for the school's problem is their legacy, not the teachers. They know this is not what they signed up for, trust me. As we all know, the educational bureaucracy, the tiniest stakeholder in public schools, clings to a micromanaged, outmoded, and very comfortable status quo, rather than moving into the same fast lane where their graduates will be expected to earn a living. In a Faustian bargain with textbook publishers, Congress has not only stuck us with a 130-year-old pedagogical model. As I speak, they are actually doubling down by increasing the emphasis on that very same coercive memorization and testing model. Why? If the SAT scores go up, they get rewarded, and vice versa. And it's not like they weren't warned. In 1983, Ronald Reagan's Secretary of Education wrote in the opening paragraph of his 2-year-long investigation into schools that if an enemy had imposed our school system on us, we would have considered it an act of war. And that was 3 K through 12 generations ago. All teachers working today have known no other system. On the face of it, that is unsustainable. Just imagine the US military fighting the modern enemy, but by law equipped only with 100-year-old weapons and tactics. 3 generations under this coercive testing, with the results only getting worse, is not a recipe for an informed voter base either. Someone once said you get the government you deserve, since the government is the reflection of the people as a whole. So it should come as no surprise, therefore, that a recent Gallup poll revealed that 55% of high school students and 70% of teachers are psychologically disengaged. Another way of putting this is this: a majority of high school students are in effect in adolescent daycare, costing US taxpayers close to $200 billion per year. It does not have to be this way. Let me offer you a simple change that will go a long way towards re-engaging our students and teachers. In 8th grade, American students begin algebra. Why? The government mandates it. It's now on the test for all 8th graders. This means that each year 4 million extremely diverse 8th graders are given the same and only reason to learn algebra or anything: it's on the test. By law, the teacher must teach algebra and the students must learn it to get a passing grade. If they don't, their district, regardless of its socio-economic conditions, will be punished. This is teaching by policy-driven coercion, and that's not even democratic. Professor Gray at Boston College found the levels of stress hormones in students about to be tested was worse than the inmates in state prisons. If you're a parent or a student, this will not come as a surprise. Our students don't feel emotionally safe, and safety is the necessary condition for learning, right above food and shelter. As the world speeds towards mass customization, our schools, the most diverse in the world, are, by congressional mandate, headed towards mass homogenization. It does not have to be this way, but how can we change the approach? Well, instead of introducing algebra, or any subject, to vulnerable middle schoolers with the usual ominous instruction, open your textbooks to page 3, have your students form into teams and first ask and answer this simple question: why does algebra matter? And then watch as your students use the Terego method to decide why and how algebra works for each of them. Here's what happened in Miss Hembry's 10th grade class in Lakewood Ranch, Florida. After learning and then using my methodology, and without a teacher lecturing them, but guiding them instead, one group of 5 otherwise unremarkable Generation Z students concluded that, and I quote, "Algebra matters because it is the only subject on the curriculum that uses knowns to find unknowns, and we will really need to know how to do that in our careers." Spot on. Question: do you think Miss Hembry's students were more motivated to study algebra after this simple exercise in student-centered Socratic inquiry rather than by being threatened? Did her students buy in a little more to their education? Were they proud enough to tell their parents what they did in school today? Miss Hembry's students created their own unique reason to learn algebra. That is mass customization. It's simple, really. If people convince themselves of the need to learn, the fire comes from within. Having their feet held to the fire has the opposite effect. This is how Bernard Schindelhosler, a vice president of Google, neatly summed up the total mismatch between what we demand students must learn and what they so desperately need to learn. He said, "We need to be realistic. In this era, no one will hire or promote you because of what you know. Google already knows everything, or will soon." What is he really saying? Companies will hire and promote you, but only if you can discover things the company needs to know and doesn't know. Ideation, in other words. Here's an introduction to the Terego method of ideation. I call it deliberate thinking. It rests on the foundational ideas of Socrates and Aristotle, rock stars of their time, and will help your students better prepare for a life that will certainly place an enormous premium on critical, original, and creative thinking, problem solving, collaboration, and communications. Note these skills well. The Terego method has twin pillars: context, or in today's parlance, zooming out before you zoom in, and deep questioning. Here is my book explaining the method in detail. Its message: how to discover a point of view before disclosing it. Put another way, Form an opinion before expressing it. Critical writing. I hope you will think of it as a more evolved and contemporary approach to learning and teaching, despite it being 2.5 millennia old. As one student put it to me after a seminar, "You know, it like takes the guesswork out of solving problems." "Cool," I replied. Nancy Govreau, a 23-year veteran of public school teaching, has this to say: "Watching students use the Terego method is like seeing them finally find the light switch." As a result of seeing and participating in the method, she is now part of the team rolling out the Terego method. Watch her video next if you're a teacher. Rafael de Lima of Sarasota's Booker High School had a more personal take. "This was life-changing, man. It's as simple as finding out what your opinion is before expressing it. Who knew? Deliberate design thinking. You can trust your students to work in teams because they love it. Just give them the rules and watch them practice deliberate thinking. Give your students the gift of recreating themselves and the world through ideation or deliberate thinking." I like to think of my method as giving students the gift of their very own custom global positioning system. You do not need your school's permission to show your students how to use an internal GPS. And best of all, you won't be breaking the law either, technically that is. And you just might change the law. And it's even a good time to try it. Everyone in Washington, D.C. is too busy making sure the Constitution is bigger than one man's ego to listen to you and me, or legislate much of anything, or think beyond the next election cycle. Meanwhile, your children are getting more vulnerable with every passing day. Our children don't have anywhere near the coping skills they need, even for today's challenges, let alone those needed in the aftermath of the oncoming locomotive or tsunami. Choose your metaphor, both are apt. So teachers, please, ask forgiveness, not permission. Teach like Socrates. It's the right thing to do. Children have a constitutionally protected right to the pursuit of happiness, no matter how dire the grown-ups have made their schools. If you think I've made the case for disruption, share this post, read the book, and watch the seminars, and soon play the game, watch this space. You will then be able to fully integrate thinking into lesson plans and life. Tell those with whom you want to share this video a story. 3 quarrymen were asked by a medieval nobleman what they were doing. The first 2 said, "Quarrying stone, sir." The last one said, "Building your cathedral, sire." Which one was thinking for a living? Which one would you vote for? Which one would you hire? Parents, please ask your child's teacher to give this method a test drive. Your student or child might just have what it takes to build a personal cathedral. And students, please ask to be taught this method. The Terego method, however, is effective with any age group. I will leave you with this example of how the method was used by a group of 6-year-olds. It was eye-watering. Thank you. My name is Alex Terego.